in the street, working with members of the community, friends, and guidance for those who are struggling with situations in the community. The idea of DASHR, something that we're going to talk to Vinny and Caitlin about.
Yeah, I did elbow with him. I switch around. I don't know.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
gonna ask a few questions if it's okay with you.
You know I don't like getting on that shit.
I know, not you.
Oh, okay.
So, we're here with DASHR because you're out on the streets today educating people about your organization.
Yeah, that and mostly also just talking about an alternative to calling police. And so, really just talking to businesses out here, telling them that there is another option right now. That if something happens with like somebody who's been using a substance or has a mental health crisis that they don't have to call police, there's an alternative that we're still working on, but at least some kind of alternative they can call.
Okay.
Also checking in on our house neighbors down here. Obviously a lot of people are still struggling. So.
Okay. So with this alternatives to calling the police, is the idea eventually that like when you call 911, dispatchers at a call center will make a determination which unit goes out? And if it's a police unit, if it's a medical response unit, if it's a fire, or if it's like a hospital ambulance?
Yeah, so that happens now, and like essentially they have a decision tree that says we'll send police to this, we'll send a co-responder unit to this kind of thing, or we'll send a star van, which is what we will help to try to create. And so
Okay.
it happens in dispatch right now, but the point is hopefully to get more options that aren't police, that people can actually have all these other options that are not like law enforcement to send to issues that are happening in the community. I think one thing, and I don't know if Caitlin you talked about it, but having a clinician in the dispatch center that's not that is actually somebody has some kind of treatment focus that can actually make those decisions to have more calls go to alternatives to police rather than the police itself.
Okay, so this is an interesting concept, Caitlin. So tell us a little bit more about this. You're saying that at that 911 dispatch facility, which for those people who don't know is generally speaking not sworn officers of the law who are following the Constitution, but hourly workers who are at a call center, and their job is to receive a call, enter information about the circumstances into the call, and then determine what service is appropriate to send for response. So why would it be important to have a medically trained or knowledgeable person inside the dispatch center?
I think to provide that quick triage at that time too, and ask those questions of determining, is this a mental health crisis? Is there substance use involved? Is this person experiencing homelessness? Why do we need the police to respond rather than someone that can de-escalate or diffuse the situation in a quicker way or an easier way than involving police?
So I like that idea, and I guess what I'm confused about, and I want to make sure that everybody can see this, is that there should be a decision tree, as you say, and the people who are inside that room should be trained. So why does it, what makes a difference? Is that like a supervisory role? Or how does that like help to assess 1, 2, 3 levels of crises up or down to say, oh, that's just that's not just but like that's not a breaking and entering. It's not a gun battle in progress. It's a human being who needs a different skill set. How do we make sure that our call centers are having that built-in knowledge and evaluation?
I mean, it takes it's going to take extensive training too.
Okay.
And maybe bringing in people that have a different set of skills or different training than the
So I almost hear you saying that this isn't like a minimum wage job to answer the phones at 911, but that people might need to have some kind of education or degree skill sets in that process.
Yeah, I mean, I think like on a national average, police respond to what could be considered violent crime about 4% of the time. But they're sent to everything that comes up in the community, and so the more that we can have somebody in that dispatch center who has a treatment lens, who has that kind of training, that they know that this is the, like, when emergency presents itself, we know what that is. If it's a mental health clinician, if it's somebody who's trained with medical experience, having that kind of lens can hopefully chip away at sending police to that other 96% of things that are not violent crime.
Okay.
And like that's a big piece of like just having a different kind of, like, there's the moment of like when somebody calls 911, which we have to confront, of like why we call police at all, or like call 911 at all. And then when 911 is called, because that's the number that everyone knows, having somebody who's receiving that call who will say, no, this is a good situation to send somebody who's not police.
Okay. So if I see somebody on the street that's in crises, or if I know of a situation that's going on that's crises, if I called 311 to seek help, would they do anything other than send me to 911?
I mean, I think it depends on, the situation, and it depends on, even what time of day. I mean, I've run into folks who have had loved ones who are experiencing a mental health crisis, who need immediate help, who called 311 and they took like hours to show up, and it was still ended up being police. And so, I think connecting those systems, but also, again, going towards the source where people most know the 911 number. Having some kind of alternative.
So in this reimagining of our funding and our experiences, it's really about establishing that, like, the reason for a police officer is to deal with the person that's not mentally off, but is criminally intentioned. And how do we determine the difference?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question. And I think, like, speaking back to that 4% of things that police respond to that are just violent crime, like in our current system, restricting the police to just show up when there's a weapon involved or immediate harm that could be, consistent with mass violence, like really restricting police to show up for only very dangerous things that like are going to be harmful to everyone. Not like somebody who might just be experiencing a crisis who has like a stick that might seem threatening to some people, but like we can have an alternative to that, and we already have proven that we can do that differently in the community, right? And so I mean, I think really restricting it to be really severe things that the police show up to that are dangerous, that do present immediate harm, that involve weapons of some kind.
Okay, so when people want to learn more about this program, they're going to go to DASHR Colorado.org.
Yep.
And there's a sponsor program button or something, a donate.
Yeah.
You selling your masks online?
We are selling our masks online through Colorado Masker Aid.
Okay. So for those of you who know about Colorado Masquerade, that's COMASKERAID.org. You can buy a mask to financially assist DASHR in their efforts. You can contact City Council and attend some meetings. So what kind of meetings do members of the Denver Metro or now the Aurora community need to attend to ensure that the program's establishment, its funding is effective to give it a chance to actually show the results that it can?
I think on one hand, the safety committees. Those are where
Safety committees?
So like next week when we present the program to Aurora, it'll be through the safety committee. And in Denver, it's always the safety committee that makes decisions on everything ranging from homelessness to weapon violence to anything like. And so those meetings especially are very important. But I would also say, on one hand, it's important to attend those meetings and stuff like that. But on the other hand, building stuff within our own community. And that's where, personally, like I'm very focused on is like building something that we know is our own and that we can trust. And like today, having medics, having people that are distributing water down by, Benedict Park, having people that are distributing food here on 16. Those are all connected things that we can have different types and different levels of response for that really speaks to the responsibility that we have in our own communities. And building that, I think, is where most of my energy is dedicated.
Okay, so it almost sounds like you're building a whole new organization whose job or role it would be is like Who are the monitors from New York? The that went through the subway stations and stuff for a long time historically, where they kind of like just monitored the community. They were like a neighborhood watch crew.
It's the Guardian Angels.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, do you envision like DASHR street medics kind of like that, where they're out in the hot spots of the community, serving as a precursor to people trying to get policing and jails involved?
I mean, I think to that some degree, yeah. I think the Guardian Angels is more about trying to reduce violence and maybe even creating some of their own violence in the process of doing.
Well,
so.
okay, I guess I'm kind of
That
just
spirit is it? Yeah,
going over the
exactly.
spirit of the mentality of we're gonna take ourselves, we're gonna show who we are, we're gonna go out into the community, we're gonna interact directly,
Yeah.
trying to prevent things from happening by offering direct solutions.
Yeah, and we're kind of working on like a community toolkit right now that would include street medic training, overdose response training, mental health first aid training, and then restorative practices training.
Okay.
All of our community members have those tools so that if a crisis comes up, maybe we could even prevent calling 911 by navigating that situation ourselves. And it's the same kind of concept of like CPR, right? Like you do CPR training. Wait for them to go back. You do CPR training.
1675. That's the second time.
Yeah, we do CPR training, but that doesn't mean that people are going to ride in an ambulance the next day. But it could mean that somebody would save a life in that moment.
If you're walking down the street and somebody's having a heart attack or choking, you know how to do the Heimlich. Yeah. So that's the mentality
Yeah.
of this effort, is to get people to have the knowledge, to carry the knowledge, and to share it as well.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I know you folks have a lot of great work ahead of you, and you're out today meeting members of the business community. Do you have any other thoughts you want to share?
Not right now.
All right now. Well, I think I just want to encourage everybody to go to dasherco.org, learn about the alternatives to policing in jail, and why it's a longer conversation than what some people are just trying to say is like defund the police, right? Because that's not very educated. And it takes a deep intellectual conversation to get to the point to say, well, back when I was a child growing up, these people had a place to go. An emergency shelter was that. It was an emergency, and we moved people into housing situations. We looked at long-term solutions. And you're a key, a spoke in the wheel, if you will, of being those solutions.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. I know this has been like, 5-6 years of direct work to create and implement DASHR here in Denver.
Yeah.
It's not something that's popped up overnight, and the work has been a long course of navigating the city and the relationships. So thank you again, Vinny Cervantes. Did I say it right?
Yeah, no, you're
And tell me again, Caitlin, with DASHR here on the 16th Street Mall, looking at alternatives to policing in jail. Thank you guys for being with me. Have a wonderful day.